The alarm didn't sound like a mechanical warning. It cried. A long, metallic wail that trembled through the concrete bones of the abandoned government facility as if the building itself realized it was dying. Miles Carver felt the vibration before he heard the sound. The ceramic mug in his hand rattled, sloshing coffee onto the scarred surface of his kitchen table. He froze, the old instincts rising through him like ice water. He hadn't heard that alarm in 12 years. He had prayed he never would again. The phone rang a second later. He knew who it was before answering. Carver, the voice on the other end said, clipped, urgent, no introduction needed. We have a Code Black event at Site 12. Miles closed his eyes. Site 12. The one place that should have stayed buried. The one place that should never have needed him again. What kind of breach, he asked, though he already felt the answer forming in that cold place of his mind that never forgot. There was a pause. A breath. Then. Containment Vault C7. The cold storage wing. Miles' grip tightened around the phone. That vault is sealed under 3 isolation protocols. It can't breach. It did. Another pause. And we lost the entire response team. 0 communication since the alarm. The room seemed to shrink around him. He stared at the old calendar on his wall, the one he never turned, stuck on a year he wished he could erase. How long, he whispered. 4 hours ago. 4 hours. 4 long hours of silence. Which meant, whatever was inside, was no longer sleeping. Miles stood. Send a transport. I'll be ready. The helicopter blades carved through the night, slicing cold wind across his face as he stepped off the landing pad and approached the entrance of Site 12. It looked the same as the day he left it, gray, lifeless, sunk into the remote desert like a forgotten tomb. Except now, floodlights flickered. Something had cracked their power grid. A soldier in a hazmat suit approached. Him, visor fogged with fear. You're the operative they called in. Miles nodded. Sir, nobody who went in has come out. The young man's voice wavered. We sent a drone down the main corridor. It showed movement. Wrong movement. Miles didn't ask what wrong meant. He already knew. He descended the steel stairwell into the belly of the complex, the air growing colder, wetter. The smell hit first, sterile chemical fumes mixed with something organic, something that didn't belong underground. Something that had grown. Emergency lights pulsed red along the walls, as if the hallway itself were breathing. At the first checkpoint, he found the security door shredded open. Not broken, shredded. Like something had pulled it apart from the inside. The metal curled outward in thin, twisted ribbons. His stomach tightened. It had changed. Evolved. He crouched near the torn steel and examined the edges. Jagged. Melted in places. There were traces of a black film clinging to the metal, faintly shimmering even in the dim light. That film wasn't liquid. It was alive. He rose slowly, awareness prickling at the back of his neck. He wasn't alone down here. Miles, a voice crackled through his comm, wavering with static. It was Director Voss. Status? It's breached multiple security layers, he said. There's signs of growth. A long silence. Proceed to Vault C7. We need confirmation of what escaped. A cold thought slid through him like a blade. Not what escaped. How much? He moved deeper into the facility. The lights flickered overhead, casting stretched shadows that crawled across the floor like reaching fingers. As he approached the lower tunnels, he noticed something else, the temperature dropping. Colder than it should be. Condensation coated the walls. Frost clung to the pipes overhead. Cold storage hadn't failed. Cold storage had been overtaken. Then he found the first body. A technician in a torn hazmat suit lay crumpled against the wall, head bent at an unnatural angle. But that wasn't the worst part. The black film, alive, pulsing faintly, covered his mouth, his eyes, his throat. It looked as if it had grown out of him. As if it was still growing. Miles stepped back slowly. The technician's fingers twitched. Not from life. From something inside. The lights flickered again. The shadows on the wall shifted. Then. A sound. Soft. Wet. A dragging, slithering whisper coming from the corridor ahead. Miles raised his weapon, breath steadying. Whatever had been locked inside Vault C7, was awake. And it was waiting. The corridor ahead stretched into blackness, pulsing faintly with the emergency lights. The dragging sound stopped the second Miles stepped forward, as if whatever was making it sensed him. The cold air pressed thick against his skin, carrying a metallic odor like rusting blood. He aimed his flashlight into the darkness. Something glistened. Not a shape, just a slick, uneven sheen along the floor, like a wet trail. It ran down the hall and around a corner, shimmering with faint ripples as if responding to his presence. That wasn't there before, he muttered. A low hum vibrated the air. Not machinery. Not human. It felt almost like a breath drawn through 1,000 tiny holes. Miles glanced back at the technician's body. The black film covering him seemed to respond, faintly quivering, like a muscle remembering how to move. He forced himself to keep walking. The farther he descended toward Vault C7, the thicker the frost grew. It coated the walls like white mold, dripping with frozen droplets that cracked as he brushed past. The cold wasn't natural. It radiated from below, pulsing like waves of air conditioning gone mad. A sign hung crooked over the next doorway. Level C, BO storage. Half of the letters were eaten away by corrosion, or something hungrier than time. Miles tightened the straps on his mask and moved inside. The silence pressed into him like weight. No hum of power, no ventilation. Just the faint click of settling ice. His breath fogged the inside of his face shield. Then, from the corner of his eye, something shifted in the frost. He turned sharply, just frost. Frost and darkness. But when he turned back, a long streak had appeared across the floor behind him. As if something had slid past silently while he searched the shadows. His pulse hammered in his throat. It was stalking him. Control, he whispered into the comm, I'm approaching C7. No visual confirmation yet, but something is alive down here. Moving. The comm crackled. Miles, proceed with extreme caution. The organism may have entered a. Static swallowed the rest. The signal collapsed entirely in the next second. He was alone now. Vault C7's outer blast door stood at the end of the hallway, hulking and sealed, at least it should have been. But it wasn't closed. It hung open by just an inch, a thin slit of pitch blackness leaking cold like a wound that never healed. Miles' breath caught. The door wasn't forced open. It wasn't blasted. It had been dissolved. The edges looked like melted candle wax, drooping and ragged. The reinforced steel had been eaten. He pressed a boot against the door and pushed gently. The metal moaned. A wave of freezing air rolled over him, burning his skin through the suit. He stepped inside the vault. His flashlight cut through the dark. And his stomach dropped. The storage chamber was unrecognizable. The rows of cryogenic pods, hundreds of them, were shattered, split open like eggshells. Frost-covered pipes hung from the ceiling. The walls dripped with a slow, creeping black slime, thicker than the film above. It pulsed. Dimly. Steadily. Alive. What the hell happened in here? Miles whispered. Then a soft tapping echoed from the back of the vault. Tap. 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 Rhythmic. Deliberate. He raised his weapon, moving toward the sound. A cryopod stood half open, its glass fogged from inside. Something shifted behind the frost-coated window. Something human-shaped. Miles wiped the surface with the back of his glove. A face stared out. Or what used to be a face. The technician inside was fused to the pod wall, skin melted into the glass like a horrific mold. Black veins feathered across his features, eyes milk-white, mouth frozen mid-scream. The organic growth trapped him in place, swallowing him alive inch by inch. Miles stumbled back, bile burning his throat. Tap. 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 He jerked toward the noise again. The sound wasn't coming from the pod. It was coming from the ceiling. He slowly raised his flashlight. At first he saw nothing but frost and darkness. Then it moved. An amorphous mass clung to the ceiling like a thick shadow, slick and pulsating. Long tendrils stretched out from it, gripping the pipes, exploring the air. The mass shuddered as the light touched it, contracting like a giant lung inhaling. Then it opened. A single slit, glowing faintly blue, peeled across its surface. An eye. It had grown an eye. The mass rippled, gathering itself. Miles staggered back, weapon aimed. The creature's tendrils uncoiled like serpents. And then it dropped. Straight toward him. The creature hit the floor with a wet, sickening thud, rippling like a mound of molten flesh. Miles barely dove aside before a tendril snapped toward him, slamming into the steel wall hard enough to bend it inward. The impact vibrated the entire vault. He rolled behind a toppled cryopod, heart punching against his ribs as another tendril cracked against the metal close enough to rattle his teeth. The thing didn't move blindly, its strikes were precise, almost calculated. It knew exactly where he was. Miles, he whispered to himself, move. He lunged out from behind the pod just as a tendril speared through it, piercing straight through the metal casing. Sparks rained. A mechanical hiss filled the air as coolant leaked out, freezing instantly on contact with the floor. The creature lunged again. Miles fired. Rounds tore into its main mass, tearing out small chunks that sizzled across the floor like burning tar. But the creature didn't slow down. The wound sealed over instantly, growing back thicker. Bullets weren't going to stop it. He sprinted deeper into the vault, weaving between shattered pods. Tendrils slithered behind him, dragging across the metal floor with a shrill screech. The creature's movements grew faster, more fluid, its mass expanding as if feeding off the cold, off the darkness, off everything. He skidded around a corner and found a maintenance ladder leading up to a narrow emergency ductway. Too small for the creature. Perfect for escaping. He climbed fast, boots slipping on frost, pulling himself up into the cramped crawlspace. His breath fogged the darkness. He slammed the hatch shut behind him and locked the manual latch. Silence settled. For 3 seconds. Then. Boom. The entire hatch bulged inward as something struck it from below. Dust rained down from the duct walls. Another strike came, louder, accompanied by a low, guttural groan, half mechanical, half monstrous. The creature was learning. It was adapting. Miles crawled fast, elbows scraping frozen metal as he pushed deeper into the duct. The air in the shaft was warmer than the vault, a small mercy, but the reek of decay filled it, clinging to his throat like mold. Ahead, faint red lights flickered, a service junction. He dropped down into the corridor. And froze. 3 bodies lay sprawled across the floor, half melted into the walls. Their limbs were fused to the steel like wax. Faces stretched in silent screams, skin cracked, eyes filled with a cloudy black film. But the part that made Miles' stomach knot wasn't the bodies. It was the trail. A long, thick smear of black growth led away from the corpses, pulsing faintly like a vein pumping blood. It wasn't just spreading, it was seeding. Miles, he whispered, voice shaking, you need to get to the surface. Tell them this thing isn't a breach, it's an invasion. He moved carefully, weapon up, following the trail. The corridor lights flickered in irregular patterns, like the creature was interfering with the power grid. The atmosphere hummed, the air vibrating like it carried a low electrical current. A metallic crash echoed from behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just darkness. A chill crawled across his spine. The creature wasn't coming straight for him anymore. It was moving through the facility. It was spreading outward. It had realized the vault was too small. Miles hurried down the hall and reached a security checkpoint. The scanner screen was cracked, flickering. He pressed his badge to the surface. Red light. Access denied. What? I'm cleared for every level. He tried again. Red light. Then the scanner spoke, its voice glitching and distorted. Biological, contamination detected. Access revoked. His blood ran cold. The scanner wasn't malfunctioning. It detected something on him. He lifted his sleeve. A faint, almost invisible smear of black glistened against the fabric. It pulsed once before fading to stillness. No, no, no. He stripped off the suit jacket and threw it against the wall. The material twitched as the smear spread, forming thin thread-like tendrils before going dormant again. He backed away fast. The contamination wasn't just alive. It was aware. And it had touched him. He pounded on the scanner again. Override, Carver 7 to 9 Delta, clearance code. The panel lit green. Access granted. Miles exhaled shakily as the door opened. But the moment he stepped through, he sensed it. The air was wrong. He aimed his flashlight upward. And his breath left his lungs. The ceiling above the next hallway was soaked in black growth, thick like a fungal forest. Long strands dangled like grotesque vines, dripping slow, dark droplets onto the floor. The entire corridor pulsed like a living throat. Something moved inside the walls, scraping, writhing, stretching. The lights flickered harder, the hum rising to a painful pitch. The creature wasn't behind him anymore. It was all around him. Growing. Evolving. Spreading. And as the walls seemed to inhale, Miles realized something even worse. This was no longer containment. This was incubation. For a long moment, Miles couldn't move. The corridor ahead looked less like a hallway and more like the inside of something living. The air tasted wet, metallic. Every breath felt like inhaling through rotting cloth. The black growth pulsed in slow waves, breathing, expanding, contracting. Alive. Waiting. He forced one foot forward. The floor made a soft crack under his boot, like stepping on thin ice, or on a frozen insect. Threads of the black organism curled back from his weight as if reacting to heat or movement. He gritted his teeth and pushed toward the far door. Halfway down the corridor, something shivered inside the wall beside him. He froze. A bulge swelled beneath the black surface, moving toward him like a grotesque ripple under skin. He backed away slowly, breath shaking. Then the bulge stopped. The wall split. Not violently. Quietly. Like a soft tear opening in fabric. A hand slid out, pale, trembling, fingertips blackened as if dipped in ink. A human arm followed, slick with the organism. And then the face. Miles staggered back. It was one of the missing scientists. Or what was left of one. Her face was stretched thin, veins threading black across her cheeks, eyes wide and glazed with a faint blue glow. She clung to the edge of the opening like she was trying to drag herself out. Miles, she croaked, voice breaking into static like clicks. Help me. Her jaw jerked unnaturally, like something was trying to control it from the inside. It's not, me anymore," she gasped. Miles took a step forward despite the terror flooding his chest. "Dr. Reeves, what happened to you?" Her body convulsed. Black tendrils bulged beneath her skin like worms twisting. Her voice dropped into a guttural rasp. "It's hungry." She lunged. Miles fired on instinct. The round struck her chest. Instead of falling, she staggered back against the wall, and the organism swallowed her. Tendrils wrapped around her limbs, pulling her inside, absorbing her. As if she were wet clay. Her mouth opened in a silent scream before the wall sealed over. The pulse in the corridor quickened, as if reacting to the violence. Miles ran. The next blast door was ahead, a thicker one, reinforced, the kind designed to hold back armed threats or seal off nuclear contamination. Frost rimmed its edges. The control panel flickered weakly, drained of power. Something banged against the door from the other side. Once. Twice. Slowly. Miles raised his weapon, breath catching in his throat. The pounding became rhythmic, too steady, too deliberate. A pattern. Tap. Tap. Tap tap. Tap. A code. A message. Someone alive. He braced himself and pressed the intercom beside the panel. "This is Miles Carver. Identify yourself." Static crackled. Then a trembling voice answered, faint through the distortion. "Miles, thank God. It's Steele. Commander Steele. Head of security. One of the toughest men Miles had ever known." "If you're in there, don't open it," Steele whispered, voice strained. "Whatever's loose, it's not just a creature. It's..." The intercom erupted in static. Then a scream. Not Steele's. Multiple voices, overlapping in a vicious, wet chorus. Something slammed the door again, harder. The metal groaned under the impact, warping inward. Miles stepped back. Another slam came. The door bent further. Black fluid seeped through the bottom like thick oil forced under pressure. "Miles," Steele's voice came again, barely audible beneath the screams. "Whatever you do, don't let it reach the surface." The next impact nearly tore the door free. Miles turned and sprinted toward the emergency stairwell. Behind him, the blast door finally gave way with a metallic shriek. Something spilled out, something heavy, slithering, dragging, scraping. And then. A roar. Not animal. Not human. Something in between, layered with multiple throats, like a choir screaming inside a beast. Miles threw open the stairwell door and dove. Inside. He slammed it shut and locked the manual bolts. The reinforced glass window in the door fogged as something pressed against it, a dark shape writhing in the flickering light. Then an eye appeared. Too large. Too reflective. Too human. It stared directly at him. The glass vibrated. A low rasp crawled through the crack beneath the door, words struggling to form inside a voice stretched by something unnatural. "Me," yells. He backed up the stairs, heart punching against his ribs. The whisper followed him, echoing through the metal frame. "Miles, we remember you, we want you back." His blood ran cold. This thing didn't just attack. It recognized him. It wanted him. He reached the upper landing and shoved open the next door, only to halt in stunned horror. The hallway here was worse. The black organism covered everything, floor, walls, ceiling. Thick and veined like a hideous circulatory system. But this time, it was different. It was warm. Alive. Growing fast. And at the far end of the hallway, something massive shifted beneath the surface. The wall bulged outward like a gigantic heartbeat. Once. Twice. Then it split open. And something stepped through. Not crawling. Not oozing. Walking. A human silhouette draped in black growth like a shifting exoskeleton. It raised its head. And Miles saw its face. His own. Distorted. Melting. Consumed, but recognizable. The creature smiled. "Miles," it whispered, "thank you for coming back." For a long, paralyzing moment, Miles couldn't move. His distorted double stood at the opposite end of the corridor, its movements slow, deliberate, almost human, but wrong in every subtle way. The black growth wrapped around its body pulsed like living armor, its surface shifting as if breathing through hundreds of invisible pores. "Miles," the creature whispered again, its voice smearing together like overlapping recordings. "You left us, but we didn't forget." The thing took a step forward. The floor sagged beneath it, the black growth sinking under its weight like a living carpet adjusting for its master. Miles raised his weapon. "Don't take another step." The copy tilted its head, smiling with a mouth that stretched slightly too far. Its eyes, his eyes, glimmered with an unnatural coldness. A fabricated empathy. A mimicry of humanity. "What are you?" Miles demanded. "We are what you made," it answered softly. "We remember the cold. We remember the dark. We remember the ones you left behind when the vault first slept." Miles' pulse spiked. The first breach was contained. No one survived. Nothing survived. The imitation's smile widened. "Nothing you could see." A low groan rippled through the walls, as if the entire facility were reacting to the creature's presence. The black growth trembled, spreading its tendrils further along the ceiling. The creature began walking toward him again, slow but unstoppable. Miles fired. Rounds tore into its chest, exploding chunks of corrupted tissue that hit the walls with wet splats. But just as before, the organism regrew instantly, reweaving itself with eerie, gelatinous tendrils. The creature's voice dropped, layered with a deeper, resonant tone. "You can't kill what isn't separate from itself." It lunged. Miles dove into the nearest lab doorway, slamming his shoulder against the wall as the creature crashed past, the floor shaking under its impact. He sprinted deeper into the lab, weaving between overturned tables and shattered equipment. The air smelled of disinfectant mixed with something foul, like spoiled blood. Glass crunched under his boots. He reached a terminal and slammed his hand against the emergency lock panel. The lab doors sealed shut just as the creature struck them from outside, denting the metal inward. "Miles," it whispered through the door. "You taught us strength. Pain. Survival. We grew because of you." He didn't have time to think, only act. He looked around the lab. Cry units. Chemical tanks. Power regulation panels. One possibility began forming in his mind, desperate but real. Heat. The organism thrived in cold. Maybe it feared the opposite. He grabbed a portable thermal lance from a supply case. Old equipment, but it still hummed to life when he clicked the ignition. A narrow, blinding line of white flame roared out. The banging on the door slowed. Then stopped. Miles froze. Silence pressed against the walls. The creature was thinking. He heard a scraping sound. Then a ripping sound. Then, nothing. And suddenly, Miles understood the worst possibility. It wasn't trying to break through anymore. It was going around. He spun just as the ceiling vent overhead burst open, and the black mass dropped through like a waterfall of living tar. The humanoid imitation didn't come through. Something else did. Something larger. Miles swung the thermal lance up and ignited it just as the mass lunged. The flame hit the creature, and for the first time, it reacted with something resembling pain. The mass recoiled, screeching in a layered chorus that rattled the glass in its frames. The heat scorched chunks off its surface, which melted into oily puddles that shriveled and smoked. Miles advanced, pressing the fiery light closer. The creature writhed against the far wall, shrinking, collapsing into itself. The black tendrils curled as if trying to shield their core from the heat. But then, something else happened. The organism changed. It hardened. Like cooling metal, its surface turned dull and crusted, forming a shell. Adapting. Miles hesitated. The creature surged forward, now armored, immune to the flame. He stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding a tendril that carved through a steel table like it was paper. He shut off the thermal lance, the tool was useless now. The creature lunged again. Miles threw himself toward the far exit, crashing through a glass panel and tumbling into the next hallway. He rolled to his feet and sprinted, adrenaline surging beneath his skin. Behind him, the creature's heavy steps thundered. "Running," it called. "We learned that from you too." The lights flickered violently overhead. Sparks rained. The entire facility shuddered like something massive was moving within the walls themselves. He rounded a corner. And froze. The hallway ahead opened into a massive observation chamber. But the chamber was gone. Completely overtaken. Black growth covered everything, floor to ceiling, forming a cavernous nest that pulsed with monstrous life. Eggs, if they could be called that, hung from the ceiling like swollen, trembling sacs. Shapes moved inside them, pushing against the membranes. Some were human-sized. Some bigger. Miles felt his breath clamp in his throat. The organism wasn't just spreading. It was multiplying. A low whisper crawled from the nest behind him, echoing from dozens of overlapping voices. "You can't stop the cold, Miles." And from the largest egg sac directly ahead, something began to hatch. The egg sac split with a wet, tearing sound that echoed across the chamber like flesh being peeled from bone. A thick, black fluid spilled down in long ropes, steaming as it hit the cold floor. Miles backed away instinctively, pulse hammering, unable to look away even as every survival instinct screamed at him to run. Something pushed through the membrane. A hand, human-shaped but elongated, the fingers fused together in places, the skin stretched thin and translucent over writhing veins. Another hand followed. Then a face. A face that looked like it had been built from someone else's memories. The creature's head emerged, smooth, pale, still dripping with black fluid. Its mouth hung open, jaw trembling as if learning how to work. The eyes fluttered, then locked onto Miles with predatory stillness. "Miles," it whispered. Not in a mimicry of speech. In his own voice. His throat closed. The thing blinked slowly, like a newborn adjusting to light, then pulled itself free of the egg. Its body was tall, too tall, limbs slightly uneven as though grown in a rush. It stood upright with disturbing familiarity. It looked like him. Not a copy, not an imitation. A version of him that never learned human limitations. It tilted its head. "We are what you were," it whispered. "And what you will be." Behind it, more sacs trembled. More silhouettes pushed against the membranes, some large, some small, none fully human. The nest was waking up. Miles stumbled back until his spine hit a bulkhead, breath shaking as he forced himself to focus. Fear was no longer enough. Panic would kill him faster than the creatures would. He raised his weapon as the first hatchling stepped forward with a fluid, predatory grace. Its feet made no sound. It was learning how to walk, how to balance, how to hunt. "Miles," it whispered again, voice thick with affection and hunger. "Join us. You've already been chosen." It lifted an arm, and the skin rippled. A tendril slid out from its wrist. A probing finger. He fired. The blast tore through its shoulder, spinning it backward. It hit the floor with an unnatural thud, but instead of screaming, it laughed. A hollow, glitching laughter like audio warped through static. Its wound closed. Not instantly. Not smoothly. It grew back like clay being molded by invisible hands. Miles turned and sprinted toward the far exit. The nest pulsed violently, reacting to his movement. Egg sacs ruptured. Hatchlings fell out in clusters, some crawling, some walking, some dragging themselves forward with serpentine limbs. They didn't chase him. Not yet. They moved with eerie patience, spreading through the chamber like a swarm exploring new territory. Miles reached the stairwell door and yanked it open, but froze. The stairwell wasn't empty. Black tendrils coiled down the stairs like roots searching for water. They moved. Not wildly, deliberately, curving toward him like tongues. He slammed the door shut. He was trapped between the nest and the spreading organism. He turned back to the chamber just as the first hatchling reached him. Its movements had improved, smoother now, more balanced. It smiled with a mouth too wide. "Why fight what you already are?" it asked softly. "I'm not like you." "You will be." It lunged. Miles dropped to the floor as the creature's tendrils sliced through the air where his head had been. He rolled, grabbed a shattered metal beam, and rammed it upward. The beam punched through the creature's torso, pinning it against the wall. It didn't die. It reached out, stroked his cheek with an elongated finger, and whispered. "Just like the first time." "What first time?" Its eyes glowed blue. "The night you sealed us in the vault." His stomach twisted. "No one survived," he whispered. The creature smiled slowly. "We did." The nest behind them pulsed violently. Once, twice. Then all the hatchlings turned toward him at once, heads snapping into perfect alignment like a hive. Responding to a single command. The humanoid creature on the wall spoke again. "You abandoned us in the dark. Now the dark has come for you." The floor vibrated under Miles' feet as the hatchlings advanced. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. He backed toward the emergency power conduit. An idea forming, desperate but possible. If he overloaded the chamber's thermal regulators, he could ignite the whole nest. He ripped open the panel. Frost spilled out, stinging his hands through the gloves. He found the manual override switch. His breath fogged the air. The hatchlings were only steps away now. "Miles," they whispered in perfect unison, voices overlapping like a choir of distorted echoes, "come home." He pulled the switch. A rising hum filled the room. Heat began to build. The organism reacted instantly, thrashing, writhing, as the nest pulsed in confusion and pain. Black tendrils recoiled. Egg sacs shriveled. The humanoid creature pinned to the wall screamed in a broken, glitching roar. Miles ran. Behind him, the chamber erupted in a cascade of violent sparks as the thermal regulators burned white-hot. The nest was dying. Or so he thought. Because as he reached the end of the corridor, a cold voice echoed through the facility speakers, one he had hoped to never hear again. "Miles Carver," it said calmly, "containment protocol has failed." The voice paused. "The organism has reached the surface." Miles felt all the breath leave his lungs. He wasn't stopping the outbreak. He was running from something that had already escaped. The alarms had long since died. The entire underground facility had fallen into a suffocating, tomb-like silence, broken only by the distant crackle of failing lights. Morgan descended the final level of the cold storage vault, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand, not from exhaustion, but from the truth he had tried not to face. This wasn't a breach. It was a return. The steel corridor felt colder than before, coated with a thin film of frost. Morgan exhaled, watching the vapor curl unnaturally, as if something in the air inhaled it back. His boots crunched on ice, though the temperature on this level shouldn't have allowed freezing. The vaults were insulated, controlled, regulated. Something was regulating them now. And it wasn't human. A distorted voice echoed through the corridor, bouncing strangely, as if it came from the walls themselves. "Morgan, you came back." He froze. His blood turned to ice. Not the voice. Not that voice. But it was Lucas's voice. His old partner. His old mistake. "No," Morgan whispered. "You're dead. I saw the report. Lucas died in containment." "Oh, I died," the voice chuckled. "But the thing that killed me, it learned. It kept what it liked." Morgan forced himself forward, deeper into Vault 12, the origin point. The place he swore he would never see again. The lights flickered, humming. Then the smell hit him. Rot. Not fresh rot, but something older, something that remembered warmth long after the flesh was gone. When he entered the chamber, his stomach tightened violently. The walls pulsed faintly, coated in a glossy black sheen, like something had melted, grown, fused. Veins, actual veins, ran along the ceiling, twitching as if aware of his presence. Something moved in the corner. Slowly. Purposefully. Morgan aimed his rifle. A twisted figure stumbled into the dim beam of light. It wore Lucas's face. Or a version of it. Parts of the skin were perfect, too perfect, smooth like molded wax. Other parts were collapsing, sagging like wet clay sliding off a skull. The jaw hung too wide. The eyes weren't aligned, they twitched independently, searching the air, following Morgan's breath. "Morgan," it croaked, voice bubbling, forming, collapsing, reforming. "It kept me cold, but I'm still here." Morgan stepped back. "You're not Lucas. You're mimicking him." The creature smiled, or tried to. The expression split its cheek open. A slick, tar-like substance oozed out. "It remembers everything," Lucas's copy whispered. "It remembers your teamwork, your arguments, what you ate on your last mission together. It remembers how you left me." Morgan's hands tightened on his rifle. Flashback. Lucas screaming behind a sealed door. Morgan unable to open it. Frost building on the glass. Lucas's last words, "Don't let it get out, promise me." Morgan had promised. And failed. The creature lurched closer, its movements uneven, as if it still struggled to control the shape it wore. "It learned your voice too," it said. "Want to hear?" Then it shifted. Bones cracked, no, improvised, as if the creature didn't create bones but was making approximations of them. Its throat bubbled, skin split, and suddenly Morgan heard his own voice echo back at him. "Lucas, I'm sorry." Morgan fired. The blast tore a hole through the center of the creature's chest, but the wound didn't bleed. It absorbed the impact, skin rippling like water, then sealed itself. "No, more bullets," the creature gurgled. Lights flickered again. Behind Lucas's copy, the wall opened. Not a door. A mouth. A massive vertical slit in the wall, lined with pulsating tissue, breathing cold vapor. Something pushed forward, something larger than anything the vault was ever designed to contain. The sound of shifting, scraping, sliding mass filled Morgan's ears. It was like listening to an entire building inhale. Lucas's copy turned toward it. "It's awake," it whispered in Morgan's stolen voice. "And it's hungry." A massive appendage slid out, like a limb, but boneless, flexible, coated in frozen slime. It reached for Morgan, the air turning frigid enough to burn his skin. Morgan ran. Not away, but toward the central coolant control. His only chance. He slammed his shoulder into the emergency override panel. Warning lights flashed red. The entire chamber rumbled as coolant lines ruptured. He triggered a full system meltdown. The vault groaned. Frost exploded across the floor like a spreading wildfire. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal twisting and lungs collapsing. Lucas's copy staggered toward him. You promised, you promised. Morgan whispered, I know. Then everything went white. The blast of cold was instant and absolute. When the emergency response team arrived hours later, they found the vault sealed in a solid pillar of ice. But something was wrong. Something was missing. Morgan's body wasn't there. And neither was the creature. Only one thing remained, burned into the frost-covered wall. This is not over.